702. 702. Finance Feature.
It's 15 minutes before 2 and it's time for the finance feature right here on 702 Afternoons. I'm looking forward to this conversation because South Africa has quite a solid culture when it comes to stokvels. We all know someone who's been part of a stokvel, or maybe you are the person that is the queen of the stokvel. I have memory of my mother. Excuse me. I've got memory of my mother. At least once a month, in that month, she'd say, "Kia society," which basically meant she's going to meet the other ladies that are part of a stokvel with her. But also, we also know many people in South Africa rely on stokvels to be able to save for unfortunate instances and situations like death. So we're speaking stokvels as we wrap up Savings Month. July is Savings Month. According to the National Stokvel Association of South Africa, there are around 800,000 of these community-based deposit-taking clubs nationwide, with combined assets worth 50 billion rand. More than 11 million South Africans take part in at least one stokvel. For that kind of conversation, Erica Liebenberg, the head of communications for JustMoney, is joining me. Erica, good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time.
Good afternoon, Mabotja. It's nice to be with you this afternoon.
I love having this conversation, Erica, because, I know all about stokvels. I consider myself one of the queens of the stokvel. I have never missed an opportunity to save my money through the stokvel. And I do think that this is quite a solid culture in our country, isn't it?
It absolutely is, and there's a number of reasons for that. You've highlighted some of them there, and one is, it's that discipline, it's that sense of community, that sense of Ubuntu, doing something together and encouraging each other to save. It's so much easier doing it in tandem than it is trying to establish that discipline on your own.
And I was interested to realize that there are a lot more stokvels than we realize. I know there's the funeral or the burial society, as we call it, which is a popular one. I've also seen grocery stokvels, but I was speaking to Pachida, the producer of the show, and she said she used a stokvel to save for a car even.
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many different kinds. You've mentioned grocery clubs and burial societies. There's also investment groups. And there are very specific stokvels, things like school fee savings or festive season celebrations. There are so many. There's literally a stokvel for every occasion.
So how does one go about identifying the stokvel that would work best for you? Because I do think that a risk, if you are so eager when it comes to stokvels like me, and when you hear the word stokvel, you think, yeah, this is for me. I don't think all stokvels work for people.
No, exactly. And, one of the reasons is just by their nature that they do tend to be based around a specific savings goal. So that's always got to be your first question. It's a good starting point to say, is this stokvel aligned with what it is that I'm trying to achieve? And that can be anything from, the specific fund, if you like, that we mentioned earlier, to sort of longer term investments that you're looking to acquire or to achieve. And it's a hugely powerful savings tool, but it's got to align with your own financial goals and budget. And, one of the big problems that we see is this temptation to sort of join multiple stokvels. And really there's nothing wrong with that because they've all got different goals. They've got different group composition. They've got different rules and all sorts of goodies that can work for you. But at the same time, you need to make sure it's a stokvel that's moving in the direction it needs to move in terms of what you're doing, and one that aligns with your budget. Because there's no point belonging to 10 or 15 stokvels, let's say, and some people do.
Yeah.
And, and then not having enough budget to meet your household essentials for the month.
Yeah.
That's not going to help you. Or, if you're forced to take credit, take out credit for basic items because you are so overcommitted to stokvels, in that case, the stokvels are actually working against you rather than working to help you achieve your long-term financial goals. And it's all about that, right? Whether it's short-term goals, long-term goals, at the end of the day, if that stokvel is helping you to achieve, it is very materially contributing to your future financial security, your long-term financial security. And that's what you want to be sure about.
And I suppose then the question becomes, how do you know whether to enter, or to join a stokvel? Because you're right, it is tempting. You think, oh, I'm saving and I'm going to have this lump sum at the end of this, which is amazing. So how do you know whether I should enter the stokvel or not?
Yeah, so the first question is, is it going to help me achieve my savings goal? What kind of track record does this stokvel have? Has it been around for a while? And it's very crucial to check for good governance, because even though stokvels tend to be a bit less formal in nature, and that's one of the beautiful things about them, right? Because if somebody is unbanked, they don't have access to formal banking, a stokvel can really present a good opportunity for them to step on the ladder in terms of investments and savings. But it's got to be one that is well governed, And in terms of the law, stokvels that have 100,000 Rand plus in value or in accumulated funds are actually required to register with a self-regulatory organisation of some sort. And you mentioned the National Association of Stokvels earlier. That's one. There are other organisations as well. So the first is to check, is it registered? Do we have an accumulation of funds that require it to register? Is it registered, yes or no? Has it got written rules or a constitution? And that's absolutely crucial, because you need to be sure, for example, that if somebody fails to contribute, how does the stokvel deal with that? Or, if that there's a chance somewhere down the track you might not be able to contribute, is the stokvel fair in the way that it deals with that? And what kind of leadership does it have? You want to avoid these stokvels that are built wholly around a celebrity, let's say. Somebody who's a famous name. They might not be famous in the financial sector, but they're famous elsewhere. So that's very enticing, because you feel like that person's got credibility. In their field, they do. But building a stokvel around a celebrity is a bit of a red flag, actually, if that's all they've got going for them. And you want to make sure that they're keeping proper records. Contributions and payouts need to be recorded. There needs to be regular reporting that's accessible to you. And if you're asking questions around these things, and really you must, if these things aren't self-evident and provided to you when you're considering joining a stokvel, if there's not some kind of information pack given to you, and they don't like the questions that you're asking, another red flag. That is not the stokvel for you, definitely not. But if all of those things are in place, and that stokvel is heading towards a savings goal that is right for you, and you're sure you're going to be able to meet the monthly contributions, because you definitely don't want to join a stokvel saying to yourself, oh, I think, maybe 6 months out of 12, I'll be fine. The other months I'm going to straighten. No, that's a red flag as well. It's not going to work for you.
And over the years, we've been seeing the sophistication of the stokvel, where now there's actual legal documents that people sign, as you mentioned, being registered with a body. What are some of the systems and the changes that we're seeing in that space to almost elevate? Because initially it was more of an informal setup, but I do think that the move and the shift that we've seen in this space has demanded that we sophisticate the stokvel space.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing, because stokvels, they are becoming less informal, although there are still some very informal stokvels. But, exactly as you say, I think because people are scrutinising more carefully, and unfortunately because scams are so common in South Africa, and we are actually the cybercrime capital of the world, believe it or not. Frightening. And I think people have really become alert to the fact, and with the rise in AI as well, and deep fakes and those sorts of things that are happening, and South Africans tend to be savvy in general. So I think for all of those reasons, the industry is becoming, it's holding itself to a higher standard. And I say that because, it is exempt from the Banks Act as such, meaning it's still about self-regulation. And really, if there's less than 100,000 accumulated funds, there's nobody standing up and saying, okay, but you must be registered with the National Association of Stokvels or a similar body. So that self-regulation is the crucial aspect. And I think the stokvel industry at large is coming to understand that, it's crucial. It's really about protecting their members and protecting yourself as a stokvel, if you want to say elected committee member, because legal action can ensue and there are a number of legal actions that can be taken if things go wrong. But if we have a look, for example, at what banks require from a stokvel, if a stokvel wants to open a bank account, and increasingly Stokvels are opting for bank accounts because the cash situation is just way too risky. Storing funds in mattresses, big no, too subject to theft and household fires and all sorts of, issues. But if a Stokvel, for example, wants to open a bank account, they must have a signed constitution.
All right.
And that constitution needs to outline objectives, rules, management structures. FICA documentation becomes an issue. There need to be elected signatories. So, Stokvels are really, people are starting to understand that those are must-haves. They're not nice-to-haves. If you want to have any hope of investing, if you want to have any hope of having even a bank account, those are the minimums. Those are the necessary components that you must have. So the growing awareness of that, I think, is making a huge difference.
All right, Erica Liebenberg, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. She's the head of communications for JustMoney. I think something else that I've seen when it comes to Stokvels is that it's become a thing for even younger people now. There was a time where the Stokvel was only for the older, it was actually older women, at least where I was from. I know that men also take part in Stokvels, but now I'm seeing, young people also joining. And I think for me and many other people, it's really about the discipline, right? And the idea that I put this money there and I know for sure that at the end of 3, 6 or a year, 3 months, 6 months or a year, I'm going to get my money back. So yeah, thank you to Erica for that conversation.